Of course, oil fracking being that technology to get oil, gas, hydrocarbons from deep within the earth. Chris, what about your own shortages? If you wanted to pump more, could you?
Yes. Ty is right. For sure, there is investor resistance, a decade of bad returns. So that's a real factor. We're in the frac service business, and that's very tight, as is drilling rigs. So all his points are spot on. But there's a third factor that I think it's critical we not forget, which is this sort of naive and misdirected government belief. And it's not just this administration, it's been around for a long time, that somehow a few more solar panels and wind turbines are going to reduce the demand for oil. They're not. They're simply not. But this sort of policy, public opposition to oil and gas development has just driven production offshore. That doesn't reduce greenhouse gas emissions. That doesn't clean the air. But it's a political misunderstanding of energy and climate change that's a growing factor. And I think probably the biggest new factor for why the world has an energy crisis today, why natural gas prices are just insanely high in Europe, and why oil markets are tight and likely to remain tight for years. We need a little more sobriety in understanding energy.
Yeah, so then what does the right policy, the right amount of political hand-holding, for lack of a better word, what does that look like to you? What do you need?
We need the government out of the way. So regulatory permits. There are 6 LNG, liquefied natural gas export terminals that have been trying to get permitted for years. If 2 more of those had been permitted, we would not have the train wreck we have in Europe today. The United States has enormous natural gas reserves. We could produce more natural gas. It's all limited by the ability to get it to market. We can't get pipelines permitted coming out of the Northeast. Heck, we couldn't get a pipeline from Canada to our own Gulf Coast to refine more heavy oil, which is a good fit for American refineries. It's this kind of infrastructure naivete that opposing oil and gas is somehow going to solve climate change or make the world a better place. It's not.
Well, the most recent energy crunch that we're in now, then, whether you look at Europe or the concerns about production not ramping up into next year in the U.S., what does this do for an energy transition? Do you think it throws it off base for the next couple of years? How do you balance both issues?
Even that term energy transition has been, look, I went to college to work on fusion energy. I worked in solar energy. I worked in geothermal energy. Hydrocarbons have gone from 87% of global energy 30 years ago to 84% today. We're not in the middle of an energy transition. We're investing a lot of money in some new energy technologies. Some of this is great, but it's not an energy transition. 3 decades from now, the vast majority of global energy will come from hydrocarbons. That's just math and physics. That's what's going to happen. So pretending that we're going to quickly transition in a decade or 2 or 3 decades has led to this sort of mainstream belief that we should oppose pipelines. We should spend $1/3 trillion to make our electricity grid less stable and more expensive. Look, I just want some honesty and some people looking at the actual numbers of what's really happening.
Okay, Chris, so if perhaps some of the production is put offshore, if indeed we are still as dependent, as you say, on hydrocarbons, on oil, on gas, does it come down to carbon capture? I mean, I don't want to wade into the debate of whether you believe that climate change is real or not, but there is an element that people want to see an improvement in air quality, for example, or a movement. That's why Elon Musk does what he does in terms of at least providing electric vehicles. Of course, we can debate on how you charge them. But I'm interested, Chris, more longer term, for your business, do you just keep on investing the same sort of rate that you do? Do you start to look at ways in which you can use, after bringing these things out of the earth, a way in which you can make for a cleaner production way?
Look, the biggest driver of reducing greenhouse gas emissions in the U.S. and globally by far has been natural gas taking market share away from coal. This is 60% of U.S. reductions come from that one thing. There's enormous room to run there. So natural gas displacing coal, that's a decarbonization step that's meaningful. Nuclear power, seeing a renaissance and growing on large scale, that's a meaningful reduction in greenhouse gas emissions in electricity production. There's new generation of geothermal that looks exciting for sure. I'm all about, in fact, my company, Liberty Energy, we invested $10 million and we're partners on a new geothermal project. So I'm not here to protect market share for oil and gas, not at all. I'm just here to be honest. But we should do credible things and mostly driven by market forces. But shoveling subsidies to wind and solar, who are 3% of global energy, that's not meaningfully going to change greenhouse gas emissions. But it is going to drive electricity prices up and make grids less stable, as we've seen across Europe and as we're seeing in California, New York, Texas. That's a growing problem. We don't need more problems. We need more solutions.